Welcome to the story world. By subscribing the channel, you can know effective facts about life and turn on the notification bell for our next video. Let's start the video. In a small mountain town lived Arjun, a young man with big dreams but a habit of procrastinating. Convinced he had all the time in the world, he ignored his father's advice about the importance of making every moment count. One evening, a family friend shared a story about a young man who had learned the hard way that time, once lost, can never be regained. This simple tale changed Arjun's life forever, teaching him that time is the most valuable resource we have and to live with purpose before it's too late. In a small village surrounded by lush green hills and vast fields lived a young boy named Arjun. Known for his radiant smile and generous heart, Arjun had a talent for making everyone around him feel happy. But despite his joyful nature, life hadn't always been easy for him. Arjun's family was poor, and they struggled every day to meet their basic needs. Yet he found joy in simple things: the warmth of the morning sun, the cool shade of a tree, or the laughter of his friends. One rainy season, disaster struck the village. The rains were so heavy that they flooded the river nearby, and within hours the entire village was submerged underwater. The crops that villagers had worked hard to plant were washed away, houses were flooded, and people were devastated by the loss of their homes and livelihoods. Arjun's family was no exception. They lost their small house and the little belongings they had. They were forced to move to a shelter set up by a local charity with little more than the clothes on their backs. The village was gripped with sorrow, and despair lingered in every corner. Arjun's parents, overwhelmed by the sudden loss, became silent and withdrawn. His father would sit staring at the ground, while his mother often cried silently at night, thinking no one noticed. The once cheerful village was now filled with sadness, and Arjun, too, felt his spirits sink. For the first time, he found it hard to keep smiling. But Arjun knew one thing: if he allowed himself to be pulled down by sadness, there would be no one to help his family. He realized that he had to stay positive, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. He wanted to bring hope back to his family and friends, so he began searching for ways to lift their spirits, even in the midst of the disaster. One morning, he gathered a group of children who were living in the shelter. They sat on the muddy ground outside, surrounded by makeshift tents, while Arjun began to tell stories. He shared tales of brave warriors, clever animals, and magical lands. With every story he told, the children laughed, their eyes brightening with hope. Even the adults, who had lost their smiles, would sometimes pause and listen, forgetting their worries for a moment. Soon, Arjun thought of another way to keep everyone's spirits up. He noticed that many of the villagers were too lost in their grief to care for the shelter properly. Trash lay scattered around, and the air was filled with a sense of despair. Arjun knew that if he could change the atmosphere, it might help everyone feel a bit better. So he gathered the children once more, and together they started cleaning up the shelter. They picked up litter, swept the area, and even managed to gather some flowers from the few bushes that had survived the flood. The shelter started looking cleaner and brighter, and some of the adults joined in, touched by Arjun's initiative. As the days passed, Arjun continued to come up with little projects to keep everyone engaged and uplifted. They organized games, created small art projects, and sang songs around a small fire at night. The villagers slowly began to recover from their despair, taking comfort in the laughter and joy Arjun was able to bring. One day, an old man from the village named Ramesh approached Arjun. He was known for his wisdom and had watched Arjun's efforts with admiration. He placed a hand on Arjun's shoulder and said, "Arjun, what you have done for this village is remarkable. While we were drowning in sorrow, you brought us hope. You taught us how to find light even in the darkest times." Arjun looked at Ramesh with surprise. "But I'm just a boy. All I did was try to make people happy." The old man nodded. "That's exactly what we needed. You reminded us that no matter what happens, there's always a reason to keep going. Your positivity has changed everything." Hearing those words, Arjun felt a warmth in his heart. He hadn't realized the impact his small acts had made. The villagers, inspired by Arjun's positivity, decided to come together to rebuild the village. They worked side by side, helping one another, sharing food and resources, and encouraging each other to keep going. And even as they faced challenges, Arjun continued to remind them to look for the good in every situation. After many weeks, the village slowly returned to normal. Houses were rebuilt, fields were replanted, and the riverbanks were strengthened to prevent future flooding. The village looked different, but there was a new strength in the air, one that hadn't been there before. The villagers had learned to be resilient, and they knew it was thanks to a young boy who refused to let sorrow take over. Years later, Arjun grew up and continued to spread positivity wherever he went. His village remembered him as the boy who brought sunshine into their storm and inspired them to see the good even when life seemed bleak. His story became a legend, passed down from one generation to the next, teaching everyone who heard it the power of positivity and resilience. The villagers learned that life would always have its storms, but with hope, kindness, and a positive spirit, they could face anything that came their way. And whenever a difficult time struck, they would remind themselves of Arjun's words. In every dark moment, there is a reason to smile, even if you have to look a little harder to find it. Arjun's story became a beacon for his village, a reminder that even in the worst situations, they could choose to be positive. His legacy lived on, inspiring countless others to find their own inner strength and to remember that no matter how dark the world might seem, there's always a little bit of sunshine waiting to break through.